Hello, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the Elite Hockey Fans Podcast. My name is Trevor, and I'll be your main host for today's episode. Also joining me today is Colin.
Hello.
And also joining us tonight is Will. Will, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm Will. As Trevor just said, I go by X Factor in the EHF Discord server. I've been following hockey for around 20 years as a Devils fan, similar to Trevor. I bring a knowledge of advanced statistics and just some general fantasy sports knowledge. In the past, I have done a bunch of MLB-related projects. I've made a daily fantasy projection model and done some stuff for season-long fantasy as well. I hope that I'll be able to bring something like this to NHL, maybe change up my model and make it so that I can do something for season-long fantasy hockey, bring you some sort of ranking system for fantasy hockey, and then just bring along some of the other stuff I touched on with the advanced statistics and a different way of looking at the game. So that's enough about me. I guess we'll transition into the portion of the episode. So today we're going to be talking about a bunch of the stuff with the trades that happened over the past, I guess, maybe like week and a half or so. And we'll try to go in order of what happened. So we'll start out with the Patrick Marleau trade.
Yes, it was the Carolina Hurricanes acquiring Patrick Marleau from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for a 6th-round pick that's going back to Toronto. And also the Leafs traded a 2020 conditional first-round pick. And the condition is if the Leafs pick is top 10 in 2020, the Hurricanes will receive Toronto's 2021 first pick instead, and also a 7th-round pick also coming to Carolina. So how do we feel about this one, guys?
It was just a cap dump. Literally, that was all it is. And they weren't able to convince Marleau to return to their team, and so they made the buyout official, and now he is a unrestricted free agent.
Yeah, when I look at it, it's basically a big cap dump. It just shows you that in the NHL as it is right now, that salary cap can be weaponized at this point. They got really nothing in return for Marleau. They had to attach their first-round pick in order to move him. They ended up buying him out, but just some of the stuff about Marleau in general, his 3-year numbers aren't really that great in terms of his advanced statistics. He's basically become an average to maybe even a below-average player at this point. He's not going to really facilitate all that much. He needs guys to help him out. This was a good trade, I guess, from the standpoint of Toronto. They need the cap space to go out and re-sign Marner, maybe look at some unrestricted free agents as well. And then when you look at it, I mean, even when Carolina buys him out, they still have tons of cap space. They can go out and, improve their team. They're one of the up-and-coming teams in the NHL at this point. So,
it's also, and just a little quick tidbit for those who may not know, since Marleau signed his contract when he was above the age of 35, Carolina buying him out, there's no cap relief. It's just the full cap hit for this year and then nothing else after that.
That's a good
Pretty
point.
much. Yeah, and at the time this trade was made, we still didn't know the salary cap for the league yet. So pretty much just a cap dump at the time the trade was made. So we will see what happens with Marleau. The next trade, and boy, this was a doozy. PK Subban goes to the New Jersey Devils from the Nashville Predators in exchange for Steven Santini, Jeremy Davies, a 2019 second-round pick, and a 2020 second-round pick. And New Jersey is taking on the full contract of $9 million. So, guys, what do we have to say about this one? This was a crazy trade.
It's another cap dump trade. Like, that's the theme with a lot of these trades over the past week. It's just lots of cap dumps because the cap was much lower than anticipated. But at the same time, New Jersey had a lot of cap space, and they were the only ones who were willing to take on the full contract. And they added someone who can be a number one defenseman. There is a bit of concern that maybe injuries and and age are starting to take him down as he posted some of the worst numbers of his career this past year. Although he did miss a lot of time due to injury, but I think PK is due for a bounce back year. And from Nashville's perspective, they get another seventh defenseman who isn't really that great. Davey is a prospect, more of a Magic Beans prospect. He has some good potential, but more of a wait and see kind of guy. And then the 2 seconds are really just seconds. And Nashville moved the second they got from New Jersey to Philadelphia, so it became a wash. At least the one this year. I don't know what they're going to do with the 2020 second. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar comments. I'll elaborate a little bit more, I guess. See if I can bring, a few different takes to it. It's a steal for New Jersey. Again, cap space, you're just weaponizing it at this point. You're getting a guy who was a top 10 defenseman, maybe not last year, obviously, because of the injuries and a little bit down play, but the years prior to that. He's still only 30, so he's like probably in the middle of his prime at this point. You're getting him for almost nothing when you look at it. One of the big things for Nashville was their general manager stated that the Devils were the only team that was willing to take on his full salary. That was a big thing for them. They needed to move that off the books, probably to go out and try to get Matt Duchene. The Devils are trying to entice Hall to stay on the team. Supposedly he loved it. There was some reports that he sent out a big green check mark to Ray Shero saying that this was great. He publicly stated in some interviews that he loved adding Subban to the team. When you look at some of Subban's numbers, he was injured last season. When you look at the 3 to 4 previous years prior to that, they basically were all at a very high level. He kind of was plateaued, then dropped down. When I look at it, I think that his numbers probably will go back up, obviously, at this point. Definitely not to the same levels that they were at in the 3 to 4 year window that I was talking about, just because of the age and injuries will eventually take a toll on you. When you look at what the Devils gave up to Nashville, I mean, as a Devils fan, looking at Steven Santini, he was supposed to be good. He's not really anything more than a seventh defenseman. He brings nothing to a team offensively. His defensive numbers really aren't that good. When you look at Jeremy Davies, he's basically a B-level prospect. His upside's probably a second pair defenseman. That's pretty good. So that's like the main thing that they're getting, along with the 2 second-round picks. One they flipped for extra picks, and then the one next year. Depending on what happens with the Devils, that could end up being a middle to late second-round pick. We'll see what happens with them in the upcoming season. And then just looking at Subban for the Devils, he'll probably end up becoming either the power play quarterback on the first power play unit. There's a chance that he could go to the OV spot and blast some one-timers at the net and everything. And the one thing that I think that the Devils need to get out of him and try to get him to do a little bit more is that they need to get him to carry the puck more into the offensive zone instead of dumping it in and making it like a 50-50 of whether or not you're going to be able to get possession back. But all in all, I think that it was a great trade for the Devils and for Nashville. I mean, if they're going to get Duchene, it doesn't really make them much better to not have him, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, definitely. Just another quick point I want to bring up. The trades that Ray Shero has made in his tenure as GM with New Jersey, he's acquired Taylor Hall, PK Subban, Sammy Vatanen, and the players he was able to get rid of to acquire these players has been amazing. And I'm just really happy to have him as my GM for my favorite team. So good job, Shero. And who knows what happens at free agency as of the time we were recording this Monday, July 1st, tomorrow. Maybe he acquires someone big there as well to help entice Taylor Hall to stay. Next trade, also on day 2 of the draft, the Vancouver Canucks acquired JT Miller for the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for Marek Mrazek, a 2019 third-round pick, and a 2020 conditional first-round pick. And the condition is if the Canucks do not make the playoffs in the 2019-20 NHL season, the 2020 first will transfer to a 2021 first-round pick instead. So what are we thinking about this one?
When I look at this trade of JT Miller, just looking at it on paper at the beginning, I wasn't really a fan of it. I kind of went in and looked at some of like the advanced statistics behind it, and I guess I can see why Vancouver went out and acquired him. He has GAR, which is goals above replacement, that are higher than Hurdle, Pacioretty, Voracek, Kopitar, Landeskog, and he actually has similar numbers to Tarasenko. So when you look at it like from that standpoint, I guess it makes sense. But you also have to factor in the fact that he was playing on a loaded Tampa Bay roster for the whole entire season. So was it a byproduct of him playing with extremely talented players, and that just made him better? Is he more of like a guy that needs, high-end talent in order to make him better, or can he kind of lead, a team on his own? And when I look at it, and you look at some of his numbers when he was with the Rangers, they're not nearly as good as they were with Tampa Bay. So I think that he's going to need somebody to, really help him drive the play, I guess. I mean, if they put him with Pettersson, then he'll probably do just fine. When you look at what Vancouver gave up for him, I mean, this really in general was another cap dump for Tampa, because they have to re-sign Braden Point. They need to lock up some of these guys that are restricted free agents. They really didn't have a ton of salary cap space, and normally you have to pay to dump cap, but in this circumstance they got a good return for the guy. So when I'm looking at it, like, I don't see Vancouver taking a big step next year. So are they going to probably have the pick protected next season? Yes. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs, so it'll get bumped into the next year. Now, why didn't they do something to protect that year as well? Because we're still another year out. I don't know what's going to happen. There's injuries, there's this, there's that. Teams draft. We'll see what happens with the guys that they have coming up. But I just don't really get it. You could possibly be giving up an unprotected lottery pick. We could see Tampa Bay end up with a top 3 pick, a top 10 pick. They could then take that and flip it for something else. It just looks like you may be giving them a premier pick, or even just have something that they can go out and acquire another player with, and you're just gifting them cap space, which nobody really wants to see Tampa Bay, be able to go out and acquire better players, especially with the loaded team that they already have. So it was good for Tampa, bad for Vancouver. That's just my take.
Well, my take is a little bit more generous. Like, I think JT Miller is a good play. He's a good depth, good like role player type forward. Talented enough to put up 20 goals, but not really good enough to drive play on his own. And to elaborate on your comment, from what I understand, he played a majority of the year with Anthony Cirelli and Alex Colin. And no offense to those guys, but they're not exactly the most high tier of talent. But does Gar also take into account power play time and whatnot?
Yeah, they kind of they split it into even strength, and they also will split it into power play as well. I kind of combine the two of them. So
okay, so yeah, he probably gets elevated because of power play. Because example with power play was insane this year. But I definitely think this helps. This gives Vancouver more roster depth and gives them a top 6 winger that they can play with in terms of line depth. And I mean, you compare him with either Pettersson or Horvat, and I think he'd do fine. He brings some physicality as well to his game. He can play any forward position. So you don't have Pettersson or Horvat, you could just slot JT Miller in as your center. I definitely and I think it was smart of Benning to put the condition on the 2020 first. I think the 2021 first, he really is banking on them making the playoffs, but at the same time, why shouldn't he? I mean, at that point, it'll have been 7 years since they've hit that initial